Hi there, welcome to another class with me, Anne. Today we're going to be working on some heart openers, some back bends. That's kind of been the big request lately. People really want to work on opening up this part of the body. We tend to kind of hunch forward when we're working at a computer, looking at our phones, driving. That can be a position to be in when you're stressed out. So really learning to be more open and even help to lift can help to take some pain out, to make you feel taller, longer. It's a wonderful practice. So that's what a lot of people have been requesting lately. So we're probably going to be doing a lot of our practices in the near future with that focus. That being said, of course, always send me requests, even if they're totally different. I like variety. I like to come up with new stuff. I like to be challenged. So feel free, even if you have something very specific that you think no one else has, it doesn't matter. Everyone can benefit from my practices regardless of what the theme or what we're working toward. We can all benefit from it. A reminder to always honor your body. If something doesn't feel okay, if you're not sure, you don't do it. You need to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally. You don't want to hurt yourself. That's not the goal here. Yoga shouldn't hurt. So remember, it might be your best option to not do what I'm asking you to do. Even though I do give you adjustments, modifications, other ways to try a pose, really honor yourself today. Quick reminder that my YouTube classes are always free. They always will be. I've had some people who have donated to my teaching. You're welcome to do that. You can go to my website, gofitgirl.com, and click classes and find information there where you can donate to me either through Venmo or with a credit card. I have that now as an option as well. And I will donate part of that money to a local charity. I'm also coming up with weekly Zoom classes, so go to gofitgirl.com/click classes and you'll find that info there as well. Today the props that you will need for your poses are a blanket and a block. So if you don't have that, I have all the yoga props. Whenever I go to yoga class and the teacher tells us we need a block, I usually grab two. So if you have two, you can get two. But likely you'll only need one, but you're welcome to get two if you have two blocks and a blanket. If you don't have those, you can use things around your house. Bath towel, beach towel work great as a blanket. And then if you still have those things called books, you can use a book or books to help you with your practice today as well. I'm going to back up, get started. We're going to start in constructive rest where we normally start our practice. So come onto your mat, lie down. This is a great time to use your blanket or your towel to support your head. So you're supporting more at the base of your skull than your neck. So adjust yourself here. You start with your knees bent, your feet on your mat. You can have your feet hip distance apart, or you're welcome to step your feet wider and then have your knees move in toward each other to support each other. Have your hands and arms wherever is comfortable for you. You can close your eyes or soften your gaze. And the next time you take an inhale, see if you can make it a little fuller, longer, deeper to your capacity. Don't overdo it. And when you exhale, really let go. Let out a sigh. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. I've been reading a book called Breakfast with Buddha. It's quite fascinating. And the way that one of the characters in the book describes meditation, which is a little bit what we're doing here. We're focusing on our breath, trying to come to a place where we're really present. It's really hard to do. You want to think about things that have already happened, things you anticipate to happen. And so he mentions in the book that when you exhale, you let that thought float away. When you inhale, you notice the thought, whatever it is. And when you exhale, you just give it permission to float away. I like that idea. So we've got a lot on our minds, regardless if we're in quote-unquote normal times or in life right now. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, all the things I have to do later. When those come into your mind, you exhale and let them float away. However many times you have to do that. Next time you inhale, start to deepen your breath like we did when we first started. Exhale, float away. Move your fingers and toes, your hands and feet. You just come back to typical constructive rest. You can stretch out. Move your head and neck side to side. And then come back to constructive rest. We're going to come into what's called a pelvic tilt. If you're familiar with cat-cow, it's like cat-cow, but you're on your back. It's a pretty subtle movement, so even if you watch me do it, you're not going to see a whole lot of movement in my body. So what I'm going to do is start lying down, and then I'm going to come up to seated so that you get a better idea of the movement. So it's a pelvic tilt. You're going to move your pelvis forward and back, up and down. So like when you go into cat pose, you exhale and you're going to start to spread your low back onto the mat and hollow out your belly. And then when you inhale, you start to arch your back. So think about your tailbone. So when you exhale, your tail comes under, and when you inhale, your tail lifts up, even though you're upside down, so it makes it a little more confusing. I'll come up into a seated position. I'll sit sideways so you can see a little better. So on the exhale, I'm rounding my low back and hollowing out my belly. My back's going to move more than it would if I was lying down. Then when I inhale, I'm taking that breath in, arching the back, lifting up, coming into a little bit of a back bend. So it's that movement with your breath. Inhale, opening up. Do that 2 more times on your back. When you're complete, come back to constructive rest. And you're going to pick your right foot up and you're going to cross your right ankle over your left knee. And you want your foot to be active, so you're going to press either through the the heel of your foot or the ball of your foot. So you press through the ball of your foot if you have sciatica issues or you feel any sort of pain going down your leg or into your back. But you want your leg to be active. This is going to keep your knee safe. And then you're going to take your right hand, you're going to press your right hand into your thigh, not into your knee, into your thigh to help move it away. If that's too much, then back off. If you're pressing your hand into your leg, release. You can stay right here, or you can pick your other foot up and hug your knee into your chest, wrapping your hands around the back of your thigh. If this foot is up, you're going to press into that one as well, whether through the ball or the heel. This is, for me, a pose that's pretty intense, especially on this side, where I do need that support under my head. If you look, you can see I am a little bit lifted. I'd like to be more grounded, but this is where I am right now. I have short arms, and that just makes this pose a little more difficult. If you have longer arms, it might be easier, but something could be tight. We're all different. Every pose is going to feel different for everybody. Release on an exhale. Keep your ankle crossed over your knee. We're going to come into what's called sleeping pigeon. So you're going to bring your right foot toward the left, like you're bringing it down to the floor. It might not touch. It might. If it does, that's awesome. If it doesn't, that's awesome too. You can press into your thigh again to move it away or not. If you have a block, you could slide the block under your foot if it doesn't quite reach the floor, but it's okay for it to float above the floor. Next time you inhale, bring your legs back up. On your exhale, bring both your feet back down to your mat. Come to constructive rest. Then we'll switch sides, bringing your left foot over your right. First, just coming to this position, decide whether you want to press your hand into your thigh to help move your knee away. It's like you're trying to move your knee away from your shoulder. It might be too much. You can always back off. Have your foot flexed or press through the ball of your foot. Active foot. Active muscles keep joints safe. Let go of your thigh. You can stay here. Or decide to pick your foot up and hug your knees into your chest. Just because you did on the first side doesn't mean you will on the second. Keep your top foot active. If your other foot's off the mat, also activate it. Energetically move your knee away from your shoulder. So you're moving your left knee away from your left shoulder and your right knee closer to your right shoulder. Nothing may happen when you do that, but you'll feel it. Make sure your breath is flowing. It's your greatest tool, so it's telling you, it will tell you if you're doing too much, if this is impossible. So really honor that and pay attention. Just because this pose was easy yesterday doesn't mean it will be today. So you don't want your breath choppy, you still want it to flow, even if something is intense. Like, really check in with that. This side is intense for me, but not as much as the other side. I'm going to let go of your leg, bring your foot back to your mat, keep your ankle over your knee. You're going to come into a twist to the other side. So bringing your foot down toward the mat, whether it touches the floor, a prop, or floats above it. Your arms can be wherever is comfortable. Your next inhale, bring your feet back up. Exhale, bring both your feet back to your mat. Coming back to constructive rest, you may need to shift or adjust. And then checking in that for sure, if you have support under your head, that it's only under the base of your skull. So the base of your skull is where your head would rest on your pillow, on the floor, on this blanket or towel. You want your neck to be free of the blanket. We're going to come into what's called arch. It's a mini bridge. If we were doing regular bridge, I'd have you move this. And if you decide that you want to move it, you can. But we're not going to lift very high, so we still want to be mindful of our neck, keeping the natural curve of our neck. But I for myself feel safe here. If you don't, adjust that. So press your feet in the mat. So remember, we're doing that pelvic tilt. Tucking and tilting, moving your tail forward and back. So it's going to be that same idea. We're going to just lift the hips up just like an inch or two off of your mat. So arms down by your sides. For me, it's easier to have my palms facing down. So your next inhale, you're just going to lift just like an inch or two off the mat. So my glutes are barely off the mat. My knees are straight forward, so make sure your knees aren't going out to the side. If you feel unsafe here, move that blanket. Move it all the way. And then your next exhale, start to bring your hips back down. Let's try that again without the support. Maybe you'll go a little higher or not. And if you decide just to keep doing the pelvic tilt, that's fine as well. So the next time you inhale, go ahead and exhale. Press your feet into the mat. The next time you inhale, start to lift up just a little bit, maybe a tiny bit higher. Holding. Imagine that you have a block between your thighs and you're pressing the block through your thighs, but you don't want your knees coming in. You want your knees to be right in front of your hips and align with your feet. Your next exhale, come on down. Roll over to one side. Press your hands in the mat to bring yourself up to seated. Get your support so you can sit on it. I'm going to show you sideways the benefit of sitting on something. So I can sit pretty tall without the support, but after a while I start to get into my habits again. And this is like how I would normally sit, how rounded I am. So that can still happen with the blanket. I can still get rounded, but it's not as severe. And it helps to tilt your pelvis forward to help you lengthen your spine. And it really supports you to sit tall, to sit well. So I highly encourage that for seated poses. I don't teach a whole lot of seated poses these days because they're really difficult to do. You can sit cross-legged if that's not okay. You can have your legs out long. You could have your knees bent and your feet on the mat, just so that you can sit tall and sit well. Oh, another option is Baddha Konasana with the soles of your feet together. So, sitting tall and well here. And then you're going to bring your right ear towards your right shoulder. So don't kind of lean over anything, it's just a tilt. Curious dog tip. And then feel the stretch in the opposite side of your neck. come back up. Fully exhale. I'm going to do an owl turn. You turn your chin to look over your right shoulder. You decide how far you go. Don't overdo it. And feel a different stretch in the opposite side of your neck. Inhale, come back. Fully exhale. Bring your right hand down by your side, your left arm up and over. We're going to come into a side stretch. So if having the arm up is not okay, you can have your hand at your shoulder, keep your hand at your hip. This hand can be tented. You can crawl out if you want to go deeper. Don't just crunch into the side though. So you still have a lift even though you're bending. So you're going to really feel the stretch on the left side of your body. And again, don't let the shoulder, that bottom shoulder, come into your ear. So see if you can lengthen out. Inhale back up. Exhale, arms down. Bring your arms behind you. Interlace your fingers. If that's not okay, you can just reach your fingertips behind you. We're going to come into a baby back bend. So you want to think about grounding through your sit bones, a lift in your belly up to your chest. And so you don't want your back bends to look like this. Ugh. So it's a really subtle opening. Because we're really tight in our thoracic spine, the main part of our spine, there's not a whole lot of movement. Part of that is it was designed that way, but also because of this, coming into the exact opposite position is difficult. Your hands could stay at your sacrum, at your low back, or they can lift up off of your back. Don't just dump your head back, let your neck follow. So for most of us, we're not going to go very far. Notice your breath. Release. Give it a good shake. If you're sitting cross-legged, switch the cross of your legs. If you're sitting another way, you're welcome to stay as you are, make an adjustment, come out and come back in. And then we'll do that all on the opposite side. So bring your left ear towards your left shoulder. Feel the stretch on the right side of your neck. Might feel very different from the first side. Inhale your head back up. Fully exhale. Let's do the owl turn, turning your chin to look over your left shoulder. Don't overdo it. Check in. You can go deeper, you do, but don't compromise something else just to push a little more. Inhale, come back. And exhale. Side stretch. Bring your left hand down. Right arm can come up and over. Any adjustment I need to adjust on this side. So I have a funky shoulder. Make sure you're not crunching here. So still creating a lift. Feeling the breath on both sides. Inhale back up. Exhale, arms down. Going to come into that back bend. So we did an interlace, or most of us did, of your habitual interlace. So you want to think about your top pinky. It's going to be the bottom pinky, which is hard to do. And then you have to do it behind your back. So you could do your regular interlace and then switch it. It's going to feel weird. It's going to change the way this back bend feels, and that's okay. And if you can't do it, then you can't do it. Hands can stay at your low back or can lift up and open. So I definitely feel like I don't open quite as much with that other interlace. But noticing our habits is really good and getting out of them. You sat cross-legged, you don't realize you sit that way probably every single time, unless you've taken yoga with me before and you're reminded to switch it up. Release, give it a good shake. We're going to come onto all fours and tabletop. If you want padding for your knees, use your blanket or your towel under your knees. I don't really need padding under my knees, so I'm going to move that out of the way. But do it if you need it. If you're on carpet, you might not need it, but check in. And if you come into tabletop and you're like, whoops, I really needed support, then get the support. That's totally fine. Start with your knees under your hips and your wrists under your shoulders. For some of us, that's pretty intense. I have tendonitis in this wrist, so sometimes this 90-degree angle is too much. So you might find that you need to step your hands more forward, out to the side. You might need to come to your forearms. If you come to your forearms, you make sure that your elbows are under your shoulders. So you've got options. You could also stay seated. We're going to do cat-cow, which is just like the pelvic tilt, so you can stay seated with that or come to lie down again if you absolutely can't be on your knees. And we're going to move with our breath. So thinking about the exhale as we tuck our tail, rounding, letting the head and neck follow last. And then when you inhale, lift your tail up, your vertebrae will follow, your shoulder blades will come down on the rib cage, your chest will open, your head and neck lift slightly. And then exhale, so you're pressing that breath out as you come into your cat, and inhale, lifting, opening up. Do that 2 more times. Go to your own breath. Maybe you want to add a little to it, wagging your tail. Your head can look at your wagging tail. You decide what you need here. And make your way back to your tabletop. We're going to step our hands forward. We're going to come into downward facing dog. If that's not okay for you, you can stay in your tabletop. You can come to puppy pose where you move your hands forward and shift your hips back. You may do a little more with a shift. If you know wall dog, you're welcome to do wall dog. If you don't and none of these options are okay, then just have a seat. So step your hands forward, 1 hand print. Make sure that you're pressing all 4 corners of your hands, all of your knuckles into the mat. And then curl your toes under, and you're going to slowly start to lift. So you're going to lift your knees up, and you're going to shoot your butt, hip, and thighs toward whatever is behind you. And then begin to straighten your legs. They do not have to go straight. For most of us, we need a little bend in our knees. So some people do downward facing dog like this. That's a lot on the shoulders. The back's supposed to actually be really long, and I'm way too rounded. But I can bend my knees, and that's going to allow me to shift my hips back and elongate my spine. Once you're here, you can take your dog for a walk, pedaling your feet. I like to move to my breath. When I inhale, both my legs are straight-ish. When I exhale, I bend one knee deeply. Your ears should be between your upper arms. You're basically looking at your toes. If you're looking at your knees, you've dropped your head too much. You can always come out of this pose early. Any pose you can come out early. So from here, you can stay in downward dog, or we're going to come forward into a plank. Traditional plank. You bring your torso forward, shoulders right above your wrists, pressing your hands in the mat. Widen your shoulder blades. You could bring your knees down to the mat. You could bring your forearms down to the mat. Do any variation that works for you. Neck is long, so make sure you're not holding your chin up or dropping it. Your neck is a continuation of your spine. Then you're going to bring your knees down to your mat and come all the way down onto your belly. Stack your hands and rest your forehead, your chin, or your cheek. That's your crocodile pose. We're going to come into a few tiny back bends. This may be enough for you and you want to stay right here. Then you stay here. Start with your forehead or your chin on your mat. I'm not, so that you can hear me. And then bring your hands under your shoulders if you're going to want to come into cobra. If your hands are right under your shoulders, your elbows are by your sides, and your arms look like cricket legs. Make sure your toes are not curled under. So you're pressing the very tops of your feet, your toenails into the mat. Press your knees into the mat. Lift your belly up towards your spine. It's a lot. Bring your shoulders up to your ears about 1 inch and then up toward the ceiling. Then when you inhale, start to peel your chest up off the mat. So you're just opening your chest. This is a heart opener. Again, make sure your neck stays in alignment with your spine. So if you jut your chin forward, it's harder to open up. You might even notice if you bring your neck down, your chin down, that you can lift a little higher. You might not be able to, that's okay. On exhale, come on down. You can stack your palms or rest a cheek. You can wiggle out your hips. Release your low back. You can stay here or come into another belly baby back bend, bringing your arms down by your sides. Have your palms face towards your midline, towards your body. Same prep. Press the tops of your toes, your knees. Lift your belly to your spine. Activate those shoulder blades down onto your rib cage. And then lift your legs up 1 or 2 inches. Keep them long. Lift your triceps up toward the ceiling, pressing your hands toward each other. And then last, if you'd like, peel your chest up off of the mat. Coming into your locust pose. Shalabhasana. Next exhale, come down, rest the best way for you. You could wiggle out your hips, you could bend your knees and do some windshield wipering. You can stay here or come into a child's pose. If you're going to come into a child's pose, press yourself back up into a tabletop. You decide how wide your knees go. I like mine close together, but you may find wider is better. You bring your big toes to touch or come near each other. Sit back on your heels. Drape your torso over your thighs, and you bring your forehead down to the mat. If your forehead doesn't easily reach, you stack your hands, your fists. You could use your block, your towel, whatever works for you. Bring your hands by your knees, under your shoulders to press yourself up to seated. Let's come up to standing. Best way for you, maybe step 1 foot forward and then the other. Come on up into Tadasana, mountain pose. So I'm going to step back off of my mat so that you can see me better for these standing poses. You stay on your mat. This is just so you can see more of me. The more I do these videos, the different my setup changes and hopefully it gets better. But, you know, I don't have a camera person. I've got one thing set up and it's got to be able to shoot everything. So come into Tadasana, mountain pose. Start with your feet hip distance apart, feeling around for the bony protrusions. Imagine from there you could draw a line down your legs, and that line would go right through the middle of your ankles, and that's hip distance apart. And then check in. Maybe your feet are too close and you need to be wider. Maybe your feet feel more comfortable closer together. I just want you to feel like you have a good base here, that you feel grounded through all 4 corners of your feet. Start there, and then you'll feel a lift in your belly. Your chest is wide and open, like your collarbones are reaching out toward your shoulders, and have your arms down by your sides. Tadasana, mountain pose. And then we're going to reach through our fingertips and inhale up. On the exhale, keep reaching so you're pressing through your feet, lifting through your arms and your fingertips, and we're going to come into a baby back bend here. So I'm going to turn to the side. Again, we don't want it where we're bending back. Like, this is not a healthy back bend. We want to have the lift in the opening, and it's really about opening from heart center. So think about that, the lift, pressing through your feet, the lift in your bellies, the opening of your heart. You won't go very far. Keep breathing. Inhale back up. Exhale your arms down. And then you're going to step your feet wide on your mat. So you might have to shift on your mat. You're going to rotate your right foot and leg 90 degrees. Make sure it turns that whole way. Back heel is going to kick back about 45 degrees. Your toes should be well turned in so that you can easily move your upper belly and chest in the same direction as your front foot. So if that's not possible, then maybe you shorten your stance. Maybe you take that towel and you slip it under your foot. Show you what that would look like so that you have something to ground your heel into. That's totally appropriate. And then when you bend your knee, you make sure it doesn't go past your ankle. So I'm wearing baggy pants today. I don't typically wear baggy pants because then I can see and you can see better where things are. So if you have baggy pants, it might be hard to tell. So you can always pull your pant leg up so that you can see. You're aiming toward your second and third toe and not going forward. So sometimes when you have baggy pants, you can't tell. Eventually, you'll just feel it. You'll know when you're in the right spot. Bring your hands to your mid-ribs and turn them toward your front foot. Hands can stay here, cactus arms, or you can start to reach your arms up in traditional warrior one. So really creating that lift. We're going to come into a little bit of a back bend again. So thinking about the lift and the opening. That back leg is really strong and really straight. Inhale, come back upright. Exhale, bring your arms down. Straighten your front leg, parallel your feet. Let's go to the second side. Rotate your left foot like 90 degrees. So if it doesn't turn all the way, your knee is going to go wonky. So make sure you get that turn. Kick your back heel back. Toes are well turned in. You can always shorten your stance. You can also widen your stance. Use a prop under your heel if you need that support as well. Turn your upper belly and chest toward the front, toward the same direction as your front foot. Decide where you want your hands to go. Bend your knee, not going forward of your heel or ankle. Come into your warrior one here. Create a lift. So even if you have your hands in cactus or at your hips, you can still come into that. Lengthen your spine. It doesn't matter. This is just an extension. We can still feel it in any position. And then let's come into the back bend. That lift and that opening. So make sure you're not crunching in your low back. So really feel the lift and the slight opening, almost like your upper back is lying over something. Come back up, arms down, straighten your front leg, parallel your feet. So we're going to come into warrior two, which you typically need a wider stance, but you can always adjust once you're there. If you want to step a little wider, you can. Come back to the first side, rotate right foot like 90 degrees again. And this time you're only going to kick your back heel back about an inch. So your toes are slightly in. Your hips are almost square to the long edge of your mat, but not completely. If they were, then your knee is going to go wonky. So you want a little bit of that rotation. Bend your front knee, not going past your ankle. So if you are, you need to back up or shorten your stance. Bring your mid ribs to your upper. Bring your hands to your mid ribs to turn your upper belly and chest toward the long edge of your mat. And then you're going to inhale your arms up and you're going to reach from shoulder height. So like you're trying to reach from your shoulder blades out through your fingertips. Warrior two. And then we're going to do a little movement here. So when you inhale, you're going to straighten your front leg and bring your arms up by your ears. And when you exhale, you'll come back to your warrior two, making sure that knee goes in a good safe spot. Inhale up, go to your own breath. Exhale back to warrior two. One more time. Inhale up. Exhale back to your warrior two. We'll stay here for a breath or two. Sometimes I don't know what that backhand and arm are doing, so I got to take a look. You might be surprised what you see. Bring your arms down, straighten your front leg, parallel your feet. And let's go to the second side. Left foot and leg 90 degrees. Kick your back heel back just a little bit. This pose you might also need support under that heel, so you're welcome to do that. Bend your front knee. Upper belly and chest turns toward the long edge of the mat, and then reach through your fingertips. So you're like, imagine you're reaching from your shoulder blades, even from your collarbones, out through your fingertips. Traditionally, you look through your forward over your front middle finger, but maybe you want to look forward toward your mat or even at your backhand. Let's do that movement again. On the inhale, you're going to reach your arms up, straighten your front leg. On the exhale, come back to warrior two, being mindful of your knee. Inhale up, exhale down. One more, inhale up, exhale down. Stay here for a couple of breaths. Hands can always be in some other position here. Bring your arms down, straighten your front leg, parallel your feet, and step your feet back together. Coming back to Tadasana, our base pose, rooting through your feet to come to stand tall and long. We're going to come into our eagle pose, Garudasana, which is a balance pose. If you know for balance, it's a good idea to be by a wall or a piece of furniture and make your way there. I'm going to walk you through this step by step. So ground through your feet, feel the length in your spine, and then you're going to lean just a little bit over to your right foot and leg and bend your left knee. And then you're going to cross your left leg over your right. This might be your eagle feet today, totally fine and appropriate. Maybe you come to your toe. Maybe you pick your foot up, or you can wrap your foot around your standing leg. But if your hips go wonky, that's not great. So find a spot that's best for you. Your hips can be square forward. We want to have a bend in our knees and like we're trying to squeeze our thighs together, but also move them away. And then sit down a little bit. So it's like working with opposites. Bring your arms out in front of your chest. So your right foot is on bottom, which means your right arm will go on top. And then give yourself a hug. So bring your hands to opposite shoulder blades. This might be enough for you today. Maybe you bring your forearms to be parallel. Ooh, I'm falling out of my eagle. Maybe you bring your palms to touch each other, palm to palm. But it can be back of hands. You can stay here. Wherever you are, lift your elbows up to shoulder height and press away. Keep the length in your spine. You're still sitting down a little bit, squeezing those thighs, breathing. Lock your gaze with something. If your arms are in front of your face, it's a little harder to lock, but you can do it. Inhale and release. Give it a good shake. Come back to Tadasana, mountain pose. Establishing that connection, the roots of your body. Because we're balancing on one foot, we really want to establish before we move to our balance on the other side. Lean a little weight. So that doesn't mean like popping the hip out. Just leaning a little bit more weight, coming on to the ball of that other foot, crossing over. You could stay here. You could come onto the ball of your foot. Ooh, it's a good thing I'm near a wall. You pick your foot up. You could wrap your foot around your leg. Make sure your hips are square forward. Sit down a little bit. Press the thighs into each other to help create that lift. Reach your arms out in front of your chest. Your left foot is on bottom, so your left arm goes on top. Give yourself a hug. Start here, and then decide if you move your arms into another eagle arm position. Lift your elbows up to shoulder height and press forward. Like you're wearing a cape, so your shoulder blades are really wide. Keep your breath flowing. Notice if you're holding it. If you are, can you stop doing that, or do you need to adjust your pose so that you can breathe freely? Inhale to release. The gorgeous, beautiful eagle you are, flying through the air. Exhale, give it a good shake. All right, we're going to come back down to lie on our mat. Make sure that your block or block-like item is nearby. So if you don't have a block or a book, you can use your towel or your blanket. That will work as well. For now, nothing under your head. We're going to come into a supported bridge pose. Come into constructive rest and have your block or your blanket. I'll actually show with both because the setup is just a teeny tiny bit different where the prop goes. So I'll show for the blanket first. The blanket, you support more of your body because it's bigger. So you come into constructive rest. Press through all four corners of your feet to lift up. So if you're using more of a blanket, like it supports your sacrum, your tailbone, and a little bit of your low back. If you have a block or a book, I press up, I lift. Of course, my block is not close enough. I moved it out of the way. Come back down, press my feet into the mat to lift up. I just lift enough to get the block there. The block does not go in my low back. It supports my hips, my sacrum, and my tailbone. So you might have to adjust a little bit, find the best spot for you. This is one of my favorite poses. Setu Bandhasana, supported bridge pose. This one you could step your feet wide and have your knees come in if you'd like. You can keep them standing upright toward the ceiling. This is an inversion as your head is slightly below your heart. As you can see, this is one, like when we were doing arch earlier, we wanted to be mindful of keeping your neck in its natural curve. So if we have something under our head, then your neck's going to press into that. So you have to be really mindful of that to keep your neck safe. It's also a restorative pose. This can be a nice pose to do before you go to bed. Some people like to lift their legs up in the air. We won't do that today, but that's an option as well. Press your feet into your mat to lift your hips up and move your support out of the way. Slowly, one vertebrae at a time. Hips touch. Just take a moment. You might have to adjust. And then I'd like to have support under my head again. So I get my blanket. Step your feet as wide as your mat. And then you're going to move with your breath. So when you exhale, move your knees to one side. When you inhale, bring your knees back up. Exhale to the other side. Excuse me. Still have a little bit of that cough. So move to your own breath. You decide how far your knees go. They don't have to go all the way down. You could just go an inch or two. Do one more round. Once you're complete, come back to constructive rest with your knees bent, feet hip distance apart. Just take a moment. And from here, we're going to set up for Shavasana, final relaxation pose. So I encourage you, if you have time, to do a longer Shavasana than I'm going to instruct through, 5, 10, 15 minutes. You can pause the video, you can set the timer on your phone. I like to put my phone on my belly so that when it goes off, I can find it. So you're welcome to do that, or do the short Shavasana with me. I'm going to stay in constructive rest. You may find that having your legs out long, maybe as wide as your mat, maybe having a rolled blanket, or if you have a bolster, to go under your knees. I'm going to step my feet as wide as my mat and have my knees come together to support each other. Have your arms wherever's comfortable. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. And it seems like when we're in the quieter poses, when maybe we start to really have those thoughts come back to our minds. So notice that. Inhale the thought and exhale, let it float away. Slowly start to deepen your breath. Move your fingers and your toes, your hands and your feet, wrists and ankles. Any other movements, you can start to make bigger movements. Stretch, hugging your knees into your chest, moving your head side to side. Perhaps there's something else that sounds really delicious for your body. Next few breaths here, and perhaps you just stay in Shavasana. You'll make your way over to one side. Stay here for a breath or two. Press yourself back up to seated. And sit well once again. So sit at the edge of your blanket. Sit in a comfortable position for you, whatever that is. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Bring your hands together at heart center in Anjali Mudra. Keep peace in your mind. Keep strength in your body. And keep love in your heart. Namaste. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. I appreciate you being here and taking care of yourself. Self-care, self-love is so important right now. If you need to get a hold of me, you can comment below. You can email me at therealgofitgirl@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook and Twitter as GoFitGirl and Instagram as The Real Go Fit Girl. Have a lovely day, and I hope to practice with you again soon.